In this present moment, we should be aware of that we have an extremely fortunate opportunity here by taking part in human life. Human life is such an opportunity that it is likely to be a wish-fulfilling gem, something that is able to give us the opportunity to reach even the highest what we could achieve, full enlightenment. So all wishes potentially can be granted just by making use of this precious opportunity of the human body. Talking about this precious opportunity and taking the genuine information of Dharma into my life to really experience the fruit of this precious human life. When shall I start? If I don't start right now and postpone the task to later, it is the general fact of impermanence that I can never be sure to have such an opportunity again. No need to mention the future lifetimes. Even within this life, it will be very uncertain whether I have opportunities later on. So the general advice is, whenever I have a chance, a fortunate opportunity, I should make use of it right now. Now, when in this very moment where I have the chance to take the genuine information of Dharma into my heart, when I make not use of it, but instead just proliferate my already present bad habits in body, speech and mind, then what can I expect to happen? It's by the force of those bad habits, ill-wishing habits in body, speech and mind, that later on, naturally, I will be driven again in delusion and suffering and circled around in this realm of seeming world. If by the force of my negative habits in my mind, I will be driven into a realm of suffering, or hell realm, then I should be sure that there I will be constantly haunted by the impression of suffering. This is the characteristic of such a terrifying situation, that I'm under the continuous impression of suffering and no gap is there available for the practice of Dharma. Right here, now, I have this gap, this leisure to actually do something. This is the fortunate situation. Making use of it, some people will preferably practice peaceful abiding, some others will engage in a meditation that makes use of the wisdom deity, and so on. So there are various different means. Whatever we can do, what is suitable to us, the main point is that we should make use of this opportunity and practice. The perfectly enlightened Buddha has, after his own enlightenment, for the benefit of sentient beings, taught in 3 cycles of teachings, the 3 turnings of the wheel of Dharma, to enable other beings to follow in his footsteps and reach the same goal, enlightenment. Now, then, within the various paths that the Buddha has taught, there's one that's called Mantrayana or Tantrayana or Vajrayana, and within that there are 2 phases or 2 steps explained. So in one occasion, it is most important that we focus on a visualization or image of a wisdom deity that we give rise to in our mind, and also the repetition of the mantra. Those 2 characterize the so-called development phase that we engage in and train, and at a later point then, another phase is becoming more important, that is to practice mainly the very basic nature as described as the great completion, Dzogchen or Mahamudra. Talking about the first phase of this meditation, this process on Vajrayana, which is the development phase, engaging in the visualization of the wisdom deity and the repetition of mantra, the main thing is here to visualize one's own body to be the body of the wisdom deity itself. What's the point of that? The point is that we have, since time without definite beginning, accumulated lots of bad habits in our mind that are related to our body action. By doing all kinds of unvirtuous and harmful deeds with our body, the imprints of that are left in our mind. Then, to purify those bad habits, we adopt the pure body of the wisdom deity and make ourselves get used to that. This is the one necessity, but also, when having purified all those stains of habitual tendencies in our mind related to body, the second benefit is later on, when we obtain the state of the full-blown Buddha, we will be able, by the power of this meditation, to show the form bodies of the Buddha for the benefit of sentient beings. Secondly, within the development phase of this path, we engage in the repetition of the enlightened speech of the wisdom deity, which is the mantra. Repeating the mantra, so familiarizing ourselves with the enlightened speech. For one, the necessity is that we purify all our habitual tendencies that are related to unskillful speech that we have accumulated since time without definite beginning. And the second positive need is that by obtaining full enlightenment, we will be able to manifest the type of form body of the Buddha, which is called Sambhogakaya, for the benefit of all sentient beings. The first one was for the Nirmanakaya, and this is for Sambhogakaya. When in the second phase of the Vajrayana, which is called completion stage, we train ourselves to become familiar with our very basic nature of mind. And this is the exercise of training of Mahamudra. Now, in this second stage of the Vajrayana, called completion stage, is the point of getting used to our own basic nature. The benefit here is of the meditation of Mahamudra that we will, for one, then remove all the temporary stains and obscurations that were clouding our minds to not see the basic underlying nature. When all those temporary fleeting obscurations have been removed, what previously manifested as the mental affliction, passion and so on, now manifests as primordial wisdom. And the underlying genuine nature of reality will be uncovered and manifest as the Dharma Kaya of the Buddha. Now, talking about this completion stage of the Vajrayana, getting used to one's own basic nature of mind, Mahamudra, here is presented and accessible to us by the instructions that came from Kambopa and that are known as the text, the 4 statements of Mahamudra. The first statement is, as we learned, to find out everything about the mind, to be totally clear and informed what the mind actually is. Secondly, how to let mind rest stably within itself. And here we were taught by means of examples. 2 examples you already heard. One was how the Garuda bird is taking off into space. Secondly, how the ocean, vast, is resting there unmovable, without any waves. And the third example that we're going to start with now is the example of the mind abiding as the light of sun and moon, unobstructed and obscured by clouds. So the third example is an example of the light of sun and moon. If the situation was like this, that a thick, dense layer of dark clouds covered the whole sky throughout day and night, neither the light of the sun nor of the moon we could see clearly. It would be constantly dark, almost like night, all the time, 24 hours, and we couldn't see clearly the sun nor the moon. And the example is to be applied in that way, that if we were to meditate, train ourselves by falling under the influence of dullness and sleepiness. This mental darkness that we engage in is like that state of total night all day long. That's definitely not the case that we should train. That we're falling the risk of falling into deep sleep even. So the way to train is to be bright and fresh in one's state of awareness, like the light of the sun and the moon being unobstructed by clouds. Certainly, when we try to train our mind, meditate, and when mental dullness and sleepiness arise, this is not what we really want to cultivate. So in search for the remedy, the skillful method would be to straighten one's body, tense it a little bit tight, be a little bit tense and straight in one's body position, and slightly upwards to look in the open space. And thirdly, in one's whole mental attitude, give oneself a fresh impulse of attentiveness, concentration, of being freshly attentive. So all this will serve as a remedy against the state of mental dullness. Now, next example to train us in letting abide the mind or awareness is the small kid that enters newly a colorful temple place. This refers to our situation where right here and now we are engaged in the process of perceiving our surroundings. No problem that we can see everything around us, perceive everything. The problem is that in the way we perceive it, automatically we mix it with evaluation. That we engage in like and dislike towards any object that we see and hear and so on. So when we train ourselves in letting mind abide, we should train as not being involved in evaluation, by not trying to evaluate whatever we see, not to blend it with any kind of characteristics. And this is the example of the small kid that freshly enters a temple and is without any preconception about what is there to be seen. Now, the example of that little kid, to tell it in more detail, is that the kid for the first time, at the hand of his mother, is led into that temple, colorful with all the different impressions. No doubt the small child can see very clearly. But in all this clear perception, there is no sense of that kind that particular objects are good and others are bad and so on. There's nothing more or less holy, good or bad, whatever. There's no evaluation of all the sense impressions happening in the small child's first impression. This is the way that we are taught to let mind abide within itself, to be free of any thought of this being good or bad and so on. Now the next way to train in is to make use of the example of the waves that rise up from the surface of water and drop back into that surface. So much like those waves that come out of the surface of water, everything that appears and is experiential, that gives rise to feelings, sensations, everything that appears and is to be felt is just one's own mind. Know that, the instruction says. Whenever a thought, a feeling, a sensation comes up, this is a mental impression that we take note of by our awareness. And while focusing straight on its essence, it also subsides right in its own place. And we know and understand that when it came up, it was mind, and when it disappeared, it appeared back into mind. Now, then we go back to that story of the encounter of Milarepa with one of the main female disciples of his, the Dharma lady Padabun, that previously asked Milarepa to give her the instruction of how to let mind rest, how to train. And he said, well, look down at the surface of the ocean down there and rest immovable like the ocean. So she tried, and after a while she felt the need to again question the teacher. She asked and said, to rest unmovable like the ocean, this is what you have told me. But what shall I do when the ocean is full of waves? So the answer of Milarepa, when she said, when he complained about the ocean being full of waves, he said, see that the waves are but emanations of the ocean. Again, be certain, train with the certainty of this being just mind. Train with the certainty of this just being emanation. So here it is the instruction is to see that when the waves appear from the ocean, at all times the waves are the ocean. They're never different from it. They came out of the ocean, they are the ocean, and they go back into the ocean. In the same way, whenever we have thoughts in our mind, they come out of the mind, they are the mind, and they go back into the mind. They are nothing different than mind itself that is manifesting. And this certainty apply repetitively, apply again and again to see whatever happens to be just mind. The nature of mind itself that shows And by looking at it, it goes back into where it comes from. The last example used here to train ourselves to let mind to rest within mind is the example of the bird that soars through space without leaving any trace behind. And this is to be applied to the situation where we let awareness just sit in awareness. At times there may be no thought. That's perfectly alright. This is dwelling within the nature of awareness itself. And we let it happen as long as it happens. And when a thought comes up, we take note of it in awareness. The thought comes up, and the content of the thought does not create any interaction, does not leave any trace. Like the bird that soars through space without leaving a trace, and that thought that is looked at with awareness goes back into the nature of mind where it came from in the first place. To train ourselves now, we start out familiarizing ourselves with the presence of the teacher by making use of that short, abbreviated form of the Guruyoga. The short exercise that makes us get used to the presence of the teacher is to envision one's own teacher, main teacher, be present right in front and above oneself in the open space. And to him I direct my full confidence, my trust and my prayer. And then I imagine from his noble places of body, speech and mind, his forehead, throat and heart center, the white, the red and the deep blue light to emerge and to enter my own body in the respective places, purify myself, body, speech and mind, and then thereafter let the visualization of the teacher to be dissolved in the light, merges into myself, so that I become one and indivisible from the teacher himself. In this state, I may rest. If my main purpose is the peaceful abiding, then I shall do so. If my main purpose here is to maintain the penetrating awareness, then I may do so.
breath.